Conference. I'd like to now introduce our guest speaker for this session, our General Secretary, Christina McAnea. Christina was elected General Secretary of UNISON in January 2021 and did become the first woman to hold that post. She's worked at UNISON since its creation in 1993, and Christina is a negotiator and campaigner who's led on national disputes and campaigns for our public services and for our members running them. Christina, can I welcome you to the podium?
Thank you, Chair. Is it afternoon now? Yes, good afternoon, conference. It's great to be here with you. So you don't need me to tell you that it's been another difficult year in local government. Services still suffering from massive funding crisis, a crisis that we know is the result of 14 years of Conservative cuts. Cuts from a Tory government that simply did not understand or value the work our members in councils and schools do. What we saw was a pattern of deliberate neglect, and the result, a funding gap of £4.3 billion for this year alone. Now, I do think the new government, when are we going to stop calling them the new government? They've been there nearly a year. Gets councils in a way that the previous lot didn't. Ministers seem genuine in their desire to support the vital work that our members do. They say they want to stabilise funding and make the system fairer. And while they've begun to put some money in, it's nowhere near enough. Last week, the Chancellor announced welcome extra cash for councils and for social care, but the financial situation is so dire, it will take far more than the £3.4 billion announced just to put them back on track. The threat to the vital services you provide and that the country relies upon remains very real. And for several years now, we've published research highlighting the financial crisis in local councils, and this won't stop with a change of government. Tomorrow, we publish new research, this time on the scarcity of planning officers. You know this has been central to the government's policy. They've pledged to fund 300 new planning officers, but just for that one individual group, we already know there are 900 vacancies. So that's not actually going to make that much of a difference. And in a separate survey, 3% of planning officers think the government's investing in planning will not be enough. Will be enough. Ministers want to build 1.3 million new homes and drive economic growth, and they want to do that through this building project. But that can't happen without the involvement of local government. So if the Chancellor really does want to drive growth, improve local economies and make sure everyone has a place to live, she must back the people who can make that happen. And that means investing in local government and local government workers. And despite what Reform might think, and we know, no doubt in part because of government's mistakes and voters' impatience for change, people, including UNISON members, have been attracted by the easy answers and uncosted promises of reform. But governing's not easy, as the leaders of reform-controlled councils are just finding out. Promising the earth and not saying how you'll pay for it, as Reform is doing, that's the easy part. They've been able to portray themselves as anti-establishment, and they've been allowed to get away with it up to now. But this is a party led by posh private schoolboys with huge personal fortunes. They pretend they're just ordinary blokes. I don't think anyone in this room will be fooled by their latest "We're a Friend of Working People" act that we saw recently. Because the very day after the local elections, there they were, threatening to sack local government workers. And the party wants to set up a UK version of Elon Musk's damaging, and I genuinely don't know how to pronounce this, Doji, or as I think many of us think, dodgy initiative. My advice to council staff not already in the union, as soon as I saw that, was to say to them, join our union now. And many have already have. The day after the local elections, I heard Farage's speech threatening local government workers, and we started putting out messages on social media. I will confess it was a Friday night and I'd had a glass of wine, and I saw him on the news and I thought, no, not happening. And I got my phone out and I did that thing that you're not supposed to do, but actually I'm glad I did it. Because we had a surge in membership in the areas where reform performed strongly in the local elections. The number of new joiners in the 10 reform-controlled councils shot up by an average of 272%. Yep, you heard that right. 272% in the week after the results were announced. And you heard Glenn this morning say about all the steps we've put in place to support branches in those councils. And since then, Reform's had a fair few things to say about local government, none of it good, like axing the pension scheme for council staff. And while these plans are as badly thought through and financially illiterate as you would expect, they do at least reveal where Reform are coming from and whose side they're on. We know they hate things like workers' rights. They vote against it every time it comes to Parliament. Because it was our links to government and our campaigns that brought about the Employment Rights Bill, the biggest improvement to workers' rights in a generation, something Reform has opposed time after time. And as well as enhancing rights at work, the bill, as you know, also brings in new bargaining structures for two key groups within UNISON, school staff and care workers. In the case of schools, this is something very close to my heart. I was the lead officer when we previously had the school support staff negotiating body. We were just about to get it going. Some of you might be as old as me and might remember those days. And then the Tories got in 2010, and it was one of the first things they did was get rid of it. And after that, we had governments that ignored, dismissed, and undervalued school staff. But we fought for the return of the school support staff negotiating body. We won this, and I'm proud we'll be the biggest union on it. The care workers are coming from a different place. There's never been a dedicated pay agreement or body for this group before. Now, let's be clear, neither body will solve all the problems schools and care workers have overnight. And we know we'll need to push the government to make sure the money is there. But this will give a voice to groups of workers who have been ignored for too long. And they will enable UNISON reps to be in control of negotiations on their own pay and conditions. And we need to look at our own structures too. We need the right democratic processes in place to make these bodies work. And I know these bodies will be for England at the moment, but in Wales, members have backed a school pay negotiating body, and I will make sure the union is behind them in their campaign to get this one. It was really good. I was glad I was on the platform to hear the debate this morning. I was speaking at the WET conference earlier. So it was really good I got here in time to hear that debate on care and to hear from people who work in the sector or who are involved in the sector. And yes, we are disappointed that the government are saying there'll be a review, we won't get the National Care Service. But you'll have heard, some of you might have heard me speak on this over a number of years. We always knew that getting a care service would take a long time. Everybody always comes up with all the structural reasons why you can't do it. And what we did was say right from the beginning, do you know what? Let's not focus on that. Let's just focus on the workforce. Get it right for the workforce, and you get it right for social care, and you get it right for the people who depend on them. So I am pleased that whilst that may be taking longer, the Fair Pay Agreement and the work on the Fair Pay Agreement has already started. Meetings are being held, and we're told there will be dedicated money for this. Will it be enough? Probably not. But it will be a start and a move in the right direction, and something that we are not giving up on. We will keep our foot on the accelerator when it comes to pushing for fair pay and decent conditions for our members who work in the care sector. And And I say this conference as someone who last year came up close and personal with the care service in a way that I didn't particularly want to. Some of you will know, sadly, my husband died last November. In the last few weeks of his life, he was at home and we got care workers coming in. And to begin with, we had care workers from the local hospice. And I know, because I met the branch secretary when I was visiting the hospice, that it's UNISON is the recognised union, that we have members there. They were UNISON members. They were fantastic, I have to say. And then about a week, we had them for about a week, and then we got a care package in place. And we were given to some other company that none of us had heard of. Basically, the hospice didn't know who they were. And I'm not criticising the staff, but they were genuinely off the street, had no experience. No one had briefed them on how you deal with a terminally ill patient who was in a lot of pain. And I saw the fear in their eyes when they were suddenly faced with a set of circumstances they didn't know what to do with. And it was immediately on the phone to their supervisor. That difference, that makes all the difference between a unionised workplace and a non-unionised workplace. And a unionised workplace working with employers, pushing for standards, for training, for decent pay. And that is what we have to continue to do and keep our foot in the pedal to make sure that happens. I'd like to thank you for all the work your branches have done organising, particularly in schools. I know it can be difficult. School support staff across the UK need to know that it's us who represent them locally and nationally. They need to know it's UNISON negotiating their pay and representing them at the highest political levels. And I'm going to say this, conference, I know lots of you won't like me saying this, but the NEU can't do that. They're a teachers' union, and they're trying to break agreements so they can recruit support staff. Staff they can't properly represent. We worked hard to come to an agreement with the NEU through the TUC, and almost as soon as we'd done the agreement, the NEU made it clear they intended to break that and to undermine us and our sister unions Unite and GMB. I have to say I'm surprised and confused by the NEU's approach. I don't want to be fighting the NEU. It's a waste of time and energy that we could all put to better use. But they are selling themselves to school support staff under false pretences. They say they have 60,000 school support staff. I don't know if that's true, but I certainly don't know how many of them are in state schools as opposed to private schools. I know what we as a union say when people phone up to join our union and tell us that they're teachers. I've sat in the calls. We have a script where we say to them, we are not the best union for you because we are not recognised as a teachers' union. And we advise them to go and join a teachers' union because that's what you do in the trade union movement. You point people in the right direction. Sadly, the NEU doesn't do that. They do misrepresent themselves to encourage staff to join them. And believe me, I've told their General Secretary this in no uncertain terms. But our focus as a union has to be on what we can do and what we can deliver. Because we're still by far the biggest union for school support staff. We have 250,000 members in this country across the UK who are school support staff. And our members will have a say in their pay and conditions and what happens, unlike the NEU members who sadly won't. Solidarity conference is more than warm words or taking a banner to a rally or demo. It's about doing what's best for workers, not about your membership rates. And our work in schools isn't only about pay. Whenever I speak to members in schools, one of the top issues is always health and safety, and particularly violence in schools. The school system, children and young people face enormous challenges, but that does not mean our members should have to suffer violence and abuse. This is completely unacceptable. It is not and never will be part of the job. That's why we've made tackling violence and bad behaviour a top priority in the union. and in the new social partnership arrangements we have with the government in Westminster. And I know it's been on the agenda in Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland too. And I want to thank all of the members of the Local Government Service Group Executive and all the committees underneath them. And particularly want to thank Glenn and Lorraine for the work that they do. I know it's hard to be the chair and vice chair of such a big committee within the union. And all the staff who support them under Mike and Rachel, and all the regional staff for the hard work that goes into producing the excellent campaigns, advice and support to branches, and of course to all of our local government committees across the union. I'd also like to pay tribute to our national committees, the schools, further education and sixth form committees, too often overlooked outside but sadly sometimes within our own union. Despite facing chronically low pay, our further education members have campaigned hard for proper national pay bargaining. Our members deserve better in this sector. And if governments across the UK are serious about improving life chances, about giving everyone an opportunity to gain skills, if they're serious about growing the economy, then I would say to them, look no further than the FE and sixth form sector. Ignored for too long, I think, because most Tories and even most journalists and quite possibly most politicians in Parliament barely know it exists, because they and their children probably didn't go to FE colleges. But we know in UNISON, our members, our families, our children do go and did go to FE colleges. We know how important it is to people who do the jobs that our members do. Conference, we've all been suffering from the disastrous Tory years. Across the board, our members continue to struggle, not least with the cost of living, bills outstripping pay rises, higher rents and mortgages, and last year members covered by the NJC rejected the pay offer. I'd like to congratulate everyone for their work on the strike ballot, and I know I heard Glenn say it this morning, but I want to say it too, particularly Wirral, Knowsley and Barnet. But we do need to learn lessons from these results. We did only get 3 significantly sized employers over the line. As you know, we're currently consulting on this year's 3.2% pay offer. It's not enough. And if we get a reject vote, we also need to look at the turnout, and we need to think about how we play it. These are important decisions I know the NJC committee will take seriously, so I won't say any more on that. I just want to say winning ballots, especially ones covering hundreds of thousands of members, takes time and resources, as we know. And you only win ballots by listening to members and engaging with them on the issues that matter to them. And we've had such great successes locally, like just the one very close to here in Live Housing, but also up and down the country in individual workplaces and with employers. In Scotland, a few days ago, the industrial action ballot closed, and members had made it clear that the 3% they'd been offered was not enough. And it was the threat of strikes there that forced COSLA, the Scottish local government employers, to make an improved offer. An offer the union is now recommending members accept. So, Conference, as we turn the page on 14 years of Tory misrule, I think there are signs that some things are starting to improve. The increase in local government funding announced on Wednesday didn't happen by chance. It was the result of the union's campaigning work and other unions' campaigning work. The return of the SSNB, as I've said, is what members want, and it's the result of our campaigns. We are making a difference. You are making a difference. It won't be plain sailing from here on in. Sadly, there is no magic wand, and I believe until we see a change in fiscal policy from this government and we start to tax wealth in this country, money for public services will continue to be tight. So we do have to keep up the pressure on governments across the UK and with employers, no matter what party is in power. And we must keep campaigning together on the things that matter to our members and keep winning for our members. Conference, I'm looking forward to coming back after lunch, I think that's when we're doing it, to honour the winners of the Local Service Champions Awards and the winner of the New Champions in Our Colleges Award. But the truth is, every one of our members in councils, schools and colleges is a champion. Because without them, without you, this country just would not function. So Conference, enjoy the rest of today and tomorrow, and thank you for letting me come to speak to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Christina.